You guys know how it works here on Cardinals Underground. If nothing else, you have to keep up with the Joneses. And right now on the Cardinals roster, thanks for asking, Dani Sureck, there are 7 Joneses. There's Christian Jones, there's Elijah Jones, there's Jalen Jones, Justin Jones, Matthew Jones, and the brothers Zay and Bai Jones.
They're battling with the purge.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
In fact, there is a direct correlation. Cardinals Underground, Paulie Podcast, CPO still. I believe I'm still CPO. We'll see after my employee review a little bit later this week. Darren Urban, Dani Sureck, and once again, keeping up with the Joneses. And, we just can't let the front office and football operations be the only ones to add things, and flex on your neighbors. Sort of like Yelda Froholt. He likes to, add things to his garage weight room, like Atlas stones, and then flex on the other dads in his court. Same thing here. I'm going to bust out something. It's not often that I actually get off my rear and actually go shopping, especially on behalf of the show here, when Darren Urban really is the one with the expense account. But we spared no expense in the following, Dani. Here we go.
Oh, I love when we get Paulie
Give
props.
a little play-by-play. Here we go.
Paul is grabbing something out of a bag under the table. Sounds to be struggling a bit.
It's legal, I believe.
I have to be careful.
We have no idea what this is.
It could be a little fragile, if you know what I mean. In fact, do I have permission to put it up here on a pedestal? Here we go. Okay. What's the old marketing line? Leave the light on for you. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do between now and 2 weeks from now. The NFL draft. Boom. How about it? In 3, 2, 1. Let there be bird head illumination. How about that?
Nice job. Really beautiful prop. It's a cardinal head lamp light.
I know what you're thinking. At this point, you're thinking, is this Calvisi's equivalent of A Christmas Story? And the dad putting the lady leg lamp up in the front window for all the neighborhood to see.
I was thinking, is it blocking my view with the camera there?
Yeah, Darren.
People can't
Darren's
see
all
me now.
Darren over
No,
there.
I'm fine. I'm fine. I can see. It's one of those photo things. If I can see the guy taking the picture,
right,
then obviously we're in good shape.
Okay. All right. I just look.
Alex, where are you?
Since I've had all decorating responsibilities removed at Casa Calvisi by my wife, I figure, maybe I'll bring my decorating talents here to the studio at Cardinals Underground.
You should bring that to your desk down the street at the facility, because your desk is pretty bleak, Paul. You don't have a lot of decorations.
What? I'm bleak. Well, we have consensus in the control room. Everyone's nodding their head. Really?
Right.
You know what?
Maybe because I'm all business around here. Maybe that's why.
Your desk over there looks a lot like Larry Fitzgerald's house after about 18 months in the NFL, when his teammates would go over there and are you going to buy any furniture?
Or Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, Cliff.
When they did the Zooms during
true.
COVID, and he's got nothing on the wall except what the painting of the lion.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have a painting of the lion?
I don't, but wow. Okay, you know what? Now I'm on the edge of my chair. Okay, I'm ready to podcast now. I'm taking that personal.
We are officially being told that it needs to come down a little bit so that the cameras work.
All right,
so
here we go. There we go. Okay, look, it's all part of the key word this week. If you've been following the market, this will be the one and only comparison I'll make to the market.
Are you doing this to me?
Do you know what the fear gauge is, Dani?
I don't know what anything regarding the stock markets means,
the metric
Paul.
that measures volatility more specifically, it's called the VIX. It's the volatility indicator. Okay, so it spikes in times of uncertainty or upheaval, and so the VIX this week was at an all-time high, at least recent high. Volatility El Grande. I say, you know what? The NFL is at a certain point, 2 weeks plus away from the NFL draft. I mean, volatility, are you kidding me? Right now, Monty Osborne has to be loving the fact that I have at least 6 different position groups that have been mocked to the Arizona Cardinals at this point. Offensive guard, offensive tackle, D tackle, edge, corner, receiver. Not necessarily in that order. In fact, if you want a Paulie power poll of most important position groups, maybe we'll get to that later.
I know we don't like math, but I think you said 6 positions, and wasn't that just 7? It looked like 7 on your hands as you were counting. I would have to re-listen to that.
Pretty bad if I'm counting using my fingers and I still screwed it up. No wonder the hashtag I live by is no math.
No judgment from me.
That would be pretty bad. So look, I mean, I'll give you another example. Since you look a little dumbfounded here, Darren.
Not
Did you
me.
see the Adam Schefter podcast of some sort to start this week?
Did not.
Yes.
And Dani, summarize what Adam Schefter was, I don't know, trying to convey. He wasn't reporting.
I mean, it's pretty quick. Adam Schefter brought up the concept of the Cardinals drafting Shedeur Sanders at 16.
Yep. It was. And by the way,
part of me thinks that's at this time of year you need to say something that hasn't already been said. Is how I kind of took that.
I mean, if something's going to kill the light, is speculation like that. So, boom, with that, we're going to put this down in the ground for now. Okay, here we go.
I have been asked by one of our coworkers to please reach out to Mel Kiper and also tell him not to put a wide receiver to the Cardinals in the first round either. So between quarterback and wide receiver, are we saying no to that?
Here's the exact quote from Adam Schefter on his podcast this week. We're just talking and imagining. I don't think it's likely, but I'm not completely dismissing it. I don't think Arizona is likely, but there are questions about Kyler Murray. What if they take Shedeur Sanders and it puts them in a position where they can move on from Kyler Murray? I mean, could there be a bigger spike in the VIX, the volatility index, than that?
I answered a question. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, it was somebody asked a question about they had seen an article about potential cap hits or cap casualties for one person for every team at this point. And apparently Jalen Thompson was put on there. And they were basically like, is this something that could happen? And
because he's due between 8 and 9 and has no guaranteed money this coming year.
But number one, I 99.9. I'm never going to rule anything completely out, but I 99% believe Jalen Thompson is part of this team this year.
Okay.
And I would say that one of my answer, and this kind of goes to the Shedeur Sanders stuff. Right now, everybody's looking for reasons to speculate about all kinds of stuff. I mean, we've all seen the mock draft where ESPN decides every pick is traded, and let's make an article out of that. So, like, when you're talking about, okay, I'm going to make an article about one guy in every team that could be a cap casualty, even though half the teams don't need a cap casualty and it will never happen, we still got to put something there. That's kind of how I feel about the Shedeur Sanders stuff to the Cardinals. We're just talking to talk right now because we've run out of stuff to say.
Either that or somebody. You guys were at the Combine. Did you see anyone with a Cardinals logo on? I mean, not as resplendent as my Cardinals bird head lamp or anything, but maybe someone went over to Schefter and sort of, hey, and tried to plant the seed that the Cardinals might take quarterback at 16. Why? To force the Pittsburgh Steelers to come up from 21.
No.
No is the right answer.
No.
I just love all the wording. We're talking, we're imagining. I don't think it's likely. But I'm not completely dismissing.
If we're going to have any realness to this scenario, it's not even a guarantee that Sanders would be there at 16 for Pittsburgh. Yeah. Now, I don't necessarily think Sanders goes top 10 per se. This draft, though, the mocks have been so interesting because it's not as aligned to the first 10 to 12 picks as it usually is in previous years. So Sanders is a wild card. I've seen mock drafts where he's not even drafted in the first round. So I really don't know, but it doesn't seem like a guarantee that even at 16 in that scenario that he'd be available for Pittsburgh.
I'm going to say I was going to say I'd put a lot of money on it, but A, I would never wager, and B, now is not the time to be wagering anything foolish. There's no way Shedeur Sanders isn't a first-round pick. Now, I don't know where he goes in the first round, but there's no way he's not a first-round pick. Agreed?
Agreed.
I think, unless teams somehow are terrified of the circus that comes along with it.
That's not. The circus might make some people hesitate, but it doesn't make them hesitate if they think he's the real deal quarterback.
I mean, most likely he's not getting past 9 in New Orleans. I don't think. We'll see. But to your point, Dani, yeah, you could throw a dart at the board and look at the speculation. Is Shedeur even going in the first round? I agree with you, Darren. He's most likely going to go in the first round. What about Josh Simmons, standout offensive lineman for Ohio State, suffered the patellar injury? Okay, some have him going as high as 10. Some have him in round 2. Tyler Booker, Alabama guard, because he ran the poor 40, didn't test that well. Some have him going as high as 10 once again to the Bears on the roll line. Some have him going to the Cardinals, like Mel Kiper's final mock that dropped this morning, going to the Cardinals at 47. Hey, I'm all about that.
There's no way Tyler Booker is at 47, correct?
James Pierce Jr., some have as high as 13 to the Dolphins. Quite a few have the Cardinals at 16, taking the Tennessee All-American, two-time first-team All-SEC guy. Others, because of supposed questions about his character, he's had to answer a lot of questions about that. They have him falling entirely out of the first round. So typically, I agree with you, Dani. Like, there's usually 15 players, almost guaranteed will comprise the top 20. Just what order? This year, not so much.
All that stems from the quarterbacks. That's where it all starts every year. And the fact that this is not a quarterback-heavy draft puts everything else in limbo to a certain extent. And when you're talking about Josh Simmons specifically with that knee injury, if it doesn't, which to my understanding does not seem like something that's going to be a long-term hindrance. Now, I don't know if necessarily he'll be ready to go week 1 wherever he's drafted. Typically, when you've got an offensive lineman that's proven and that you can see the qualities that could transfer into the NFL, that's not something that's going to hinder somebody from taking a player like that, and you just give them a little extra time to get ready.
The thing is we talk about the quarterbacks. I normally I would agree with you because the quarterbacks are always the linchpin of whatever draft, right? So I agree with you that not knowing where, I mean, I think we know Cam Ward's going 1, but not knowing where Sanders goes, not knowing if Jackson Dart might be a first-round pick, that impacts it. But even we've had years where they don't have a lot of quarterbacks, but we still have a good idea of all the other guys. What it feels a lot more up in the air of the other guys, regardless of the quarterbacks. Now, we know Abdul Carter's going top 5. We know, I think Travis Hunter's going top 5. Those guys are going to be up there. The question is like we were just talking about. You're talking about Josh Simmons. You're talking about James Pierce. Like, how do we get to a point right now where we're talking about a guy who could be picked 12 or 13 or maybe the second round? That hardly ever happens.
It seems like the general consensus is these are players who could come in and be a starter, but not somebody who's going to necessarily be a star, the way you typically see in a draft, right? Like a Nick Bosa or a Micah Parsons or a Myles Garrett.
Well, what did Daniel Jeremiah tell you at the Combine about, in terms of Pro Bowlers versus starters, that this is a down year? If you're looking for stars, maybe 7 in his estimation. The rest of the first round will be, try hard, reliable starters, maybe have a chance eventually. But yeah, that would seem to fit with his characterization of the overall talent pool, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so a lot of the same wording that's used by general managers, decision makers, even now the insiders themselves, it's almost as if they were edited in a certain way, which I think is a good segue to this week's edition of Out of Context.
Please tell me you're clipping that. You have to clip that one.
Can we have like an out of context blooper reel or something?
Oh my, fire emoji.
Who's being lazy here?
They lost to Drake.
At least Drake's beating somebody.
What are you talking about? The beef with Kanye West?
Mike Tyson's naked butt 3 times per my request.
Appreciate that.
See, I listen to your work. It's good work.
Yes, see, your work is good. I read your work.
You guys are actually lobbing compliments at each other as opposed to the opposite. Go ahead.
I value Dani Sureck. Okay. Oh, God, that just got
out of
something.
context.
Aaron Rodgers.
We're back to that, Paul.
Yeah.
For the content.
Here's a famous story. Okay, well, not famous, I guess, in my own mind. Geez, Mr. Johnson, you got to move for a couple of questions?
If you don't have the mustard anymore, you won't be here when the season starts.
There are worse problems to have.
Yes.
By the way, after you...
I have some of them.
Would you guys rather see a bird get killed with a pitch or see a dead whale?
He's got like 18 million followers on Instagram or something.
Wow. Yeah, but you never know who's a bot.
This is fair.
They have Darren fatigue, sort of like the Nation had Chiefs fatigue. I'm just saying,
More
it's in Darren's best
Chiefs
interest.
fatigue.
Yeah, it's
I thought you said cheese fatigue, and I'm like, what?
Chiefs
People have
fatigue.
problem with cheese?
Doesn't
Cheese
exist.
fatigue. Yep.
Cheese fatigue.
Cheese
You
fatigue.
did say cheese fatigue.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Son of a biscuit.
A ravioli bite.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Texas-style chili. Yum.
There's like murderers coming, assassins, whatever. We have to go right now. What's going on? Stop, you're scaring me.
Don't you want to know what's going on?
That's fine. Have the conversation in the freaking car when you're driving away. Bad things were about to go down. It is not winning behavior. And you know what? If they end up dead, it's definitely not winning behavior.
Darren, how do you relax?
Let cinema take you somewhere you've never been before. You know, just go ahead, suspend.
Okay, Nicole Kidman over there.
There was all kinds of crap going on.
You steal a toilet.
With crowbars. Yeah, this is enough.
I thought this was a football podcast.
That's true.
When are we saying all those things?
That's the bad part is like half of them I'm like, when did that come up?
I need analytics on the out of context. I feel like I'm taking an inordinate amount of the brunt of the comments. I just feel like a lot of them are really pointed and angled towards yours truly. The good news is I have my new big man on my right shoulder, former co-host of the Big Red Rage for 4 years, Calais Campbell. Come on down. The big man, it's amazing how he provides Paulie protection around here when the big man is around. Your reaction, Darren Urban, when the one-time second-round pick of the 2008 Arizona Cardinals signed on the line that is dotted for a reunion tour that will last at least 1 year?
I mean, I think it's a big deal. I mean, I do think it's going to... I don't know how much it impacts. Like at this point, like I've been thinking about like what does that mean for the draft? Because that's the question I got from a lot of people over the last week is like, okay, does this rule out an interior defensive lineman? And I agree.
Okay.
I don't think
show
it
of
does.
hands. I'd say no. It does not preclude, just because Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols, L.J. Collier, these are all players that after this coming season, right, you could easily make a move away from any or all of those guys.
Yes.
So if you're drafting a guy in round one, you figure he's going to be a menace and a nuisance for the next decade, you do it.
I'm with you. I think that's when we talk about the draft, whether it's Calais coming in, I feel like there was like two kind of vibes that I got from people, whether it's Calais or talking about taking a cornerback or whatever. One is having too many, which I think we can all agree. The defensive line got ravaged last year by injury. There is no such thing as too many. If you can have a whole bunch of good guys and you lose one or two and you're still okay, that's amazing. And I think I agree with you. I think they take somebody somewhere in the draft.
It's almost like Monty Ossport said, you know what? After 2 years of running out of defensive linemen, it ain't happening this year.
And then the other concern, and this seemed to fall more with the cornerbacks rather than the defensive linemen, is if you take somebody are you getting to the point where you're not developing the guys you've already brought? And I'm torn on that. I mean, one, if you're going to rely on having to play a guy a ton to always develop him to that level, you're going to struggle to be a good team because good teams have some depth. And if you're going to just wing it and say, okay, who we have has got to be good enough because we've just drafted a bunch of them and I hope some of them turn out well, I don't think that's the best way to go about it.
You don't turn down a good player who will make your team better for the sole fact that you have other players you want to develop. That player is going to bring in competition and going to make you better tomorrow than you are today. It's no question. In terms of whether or not the door is still open on a defensive lineman at 16, it is open for all the reasons you were talking about. And if you're going to have these leaders and you want to develop players, you draft those players young when you have other people in that position room that can help them grow and there isn't the pressure that you have to come in and you have to be a starter and you have to be an impact player in every single game right away. When you look at the depth of this draft class and you're looking at defensive linemen or edge players, that is why I would lean more towards now using pick 16 as an offensive lineman. Not necessarily because it's not a need or that player isn't still worth that pick. It's just when you're looking at, you can still get a very, very good player at 47 in the second round simply because there are so many good players in the depth of those position classes. There's not as much depth in the offensive line, and that is a need, and you can get a very good player at 16. So the idea of taking someone on defense at 16 for me is not out of the question because of the moves that have been made in free agency. It's more so looking at the depth and the fact that you can still get a very good impact player at 47.
I mean, Mel Kiper's final mock, Dani, has Tyler Booker coming to the Cardinals at 47. So
that I don't know if that's happening.
No. He's
for
not
an
getting
offensive lineman.
He's not getting past the Lions at the end of the first round. He's not getting past the Chiefs, who just lost Joe Tooney. There's no way that's happening. All right, I'm going to go off the sheet here, off the game plan, and I'm going to throw at you guys a brand new game show that we just came up with. Okay, need or want. I'm going to list the position group, and you're going to tell me, is it a need or a want for the Arizona Cardinals? Because to your point, Dani, Monty Ossenfort, yes, they could play a game tomorrow as currently constructed. No glaring holes, maybe necessarily. But if I say offensive guard, what do you say when I say need or want?
Need.
Darren?
Yeah, I would say need at this point.
I would agree.
Evan Brown is on a 1-year deal. Isaiah Adams is going into his 2nd year. Those are your starting guards. It's a position that you can never have, in my opinion, enough depth on the offensive line.
Cornerback, need or want?
Ooh.
We've seen Jahdae Barron mocked to the Cardinals at 16 out of Texas, Jim Thorpe Award winner. We've seen Will Johnson out of Michigan. He's going to have his pro day on Monday because he's been dealing with injuries.
I'm going to surprise myself, and I'm actually going to say need, and not necessarily for week 1 of the season, but similar to how we were talking about looking long-term at the defensive linemen and some of the contracts. Looking at that in the secondary is we know that this staff feels good about Sean Murphy-Bunting and Max Melton and Starling Thomas. Who do they feel good about past that? Didn't get to see Elijah Jones. How do they feel about Keitrell Clark if there's a future there? I just think there's a drop-off when you start to go into the depth of that room. And so if there's a player that you feel can come in and be a star for you for a couple of years that you can develop, I would be good with that.
For cornerback, I'm gonna go want, and I'm gonna say this: like you mentioned, first of all, you mentioned basically the top 2 cornerbacks after Travis Hunter. So if one of those guys is sitting there at 16, I'm gonna think long and hard if I really like the guy, but I'm doing it because of the player and not because of the position. Like if I think that guy can come in and become my CB1 at some point, yeah, I'm going to seriously consider that. I'm not going into it going, oh, we need a cornerback, and that's what we need. Am I going to be beside myself if, let's say, they stick with 6 choices? Am I going to be beside myself if there is not a cornerback selected in this draft? I will not.
I mean, if Will Johnson, he's a little undervalued because he got injured half of his final year at Michigan, and you're looking at the next Patrick Surtain or Derek Stingley Jr.
Right, exactly.
Then, yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the pace I was on.
Okay.
Whatever, I'll just stick with need, but you guys know what I mean.
Wait a minute. Middle linebacker, need or want? Kaiser White, as of right now, is not on this team. And no one really knows if there is a future with Kaiser White. Need or want middle linebacker?
I'm gonna say that's a need. Not necessarily a need at pick 16, but I'm gonna say it's a need.
Dani?
It's a need.
Wide receiver, need or want?
Want. What? Why is that so funny?
It was because I was waiting for you to add "damn it" to that. Like, want, damn it. I would say, I'm going to say that's a want. I don't think it's a need. I don't think it's a need right now. But I'm counting on some moves forward by the guys that they have, I'll be honest.
Remember this time of year?
You obviously disagree.
Well, this time a year ago, we had our MOGA hat on, Make Offense Great Again. Marvin Harrison Jr. and that whole thing.
I can't remember that far back.
And, it's still a need, I think. You were top 5 in the NFL in explosive run plays of both 10 yards and 20 yards. Top 5, both categories. But you were bottom 3rd in explosive pass plays.
Yeah.
That's with a record-setting tight end. That's with a standout running back and run game, James Conner and company. So, okay, what does that mean? Yes, you're expecting and looking forward to a second-year jump by Marvin Harrison Jr., but what is he missing? He's missing a running mate, a wide receiver too, in some regards. And if he can run a 4.3, that's even better.
I think there are still not question marks, but benchmarks that this staff feels can still be hit by the players in that room to keep it as a want and not a need. I feel like that this staff feels Marvin Harrison Jr. can get to that next level with the pieces in this room. We didn't see a lot of Zay Jones, who didn't play for the first couple of games, didn't have a lot of opportunities. The fact that he is still here, this staff really likes something from him, and we might see more of him in the future. What kind of strides is Michael Wilson taking, right? And the big question is, what is Harrison going to do in his jump from year 1 to year 2? Whether that is run after catch, route running, contested catches, all of those things. I don't disagree with you that something was missing from the passing game. And I'm not disagreeing that I don't think something needs to be done. I just see this more as maybe in preseason or training camp when cuts start to be made, or maybe we get a better answer on if Xavier Weaver going into year 2 is that deep threat.
For me, Paul, when you ask these wants versus needs, it becomes a very tangible thing to me in terms of if it's a want, then it's something that you want to look at in the draft. If it's a need, you would seriously consider it in the first round. Would you seriously consider a wide receiver in the first round?
I mean, probably not.
Okay. I mean,
no.
I'm not trying to
not for the second year in a row.
That's kind of how I'm looking at it. If you're talking about a need and there's a really good receiver there, then you need to seriously consider it in the first round. Otherwise, you can't really say it's a need if you're not willing to go in the first round, in my opinion.
I guess I have different levels of need. I mean, there's glaring need, and then there's, it's
need.
Yeah, okay.
Need.
Right. Last one, I'm not going to go through the whole depth chart. Edge. Because there are a lot of edge players who are still getting mocked to the Arizona Cardinals, need or want.
I'm going to go need.
I'm going to go need.
The Cardinals did themselves a huge favor bringing in Josh Sweat, re-signing Baron Browning. You are expecting B.J. Ojulari to come back and be healthy and be an impact player. And you have Zaven Collins still here. I don't know that having Ojulari and Sweat this season as the two players you didn't have last year, if that's enough of a change. And I think the fact that the last handful of years, consistent pass rush, consistent disruption has not been there. I don't think the fact that you are expecting Ojulari to return and you signed Josh Sweat is enough to feel like, okay, we have made enough. I think that's another position too where development can take time, and so if you feel like there is a player that you see a future here with, I think it's hard to pass on that.
I'm with you. I will say, like a guy like is it Shamar Stewart, the dude with 1.5 sacks per year?
Yep.
I'm not touching somebody like that. If you're going to spend a high pick on a guy, if you want to do that in like the third or the fourth round, and you want to try and develop somebody, okay. But I'm not touching one of these high profile, has all the measurables, but has never produced anything. Not early.
See, there's another guy I got to add to the list of absolute wild cards, right? Shedeur Sanders, Josh Simmons, Tyler Booker, James Pierce Jr., Shamar Stewart.
Yeah,
he's top 10 in some mocks.
Yeah.
He's middle around 2 in others.
And that's why, because he's when you draw up a guy, that's him,
right.
But he's got 4.5 sacks in 3 years.
He's 6'5", 267, runs a 4.59 40. I'm looking at right here. You realize that's faster than Cam Scatterbo. And he's been asked repeatedly about where was the production, potential versus production. And he said, and I quote, "Sometimes the stats don't tell the whole story. It's all about the film. And when you look at the film, you can really see what's going on for the most part."
I think he can disrupt. I saw something the other day, though, the number of tackles he misses that he doesn't finish. Now, I don't know if that's all about the sacks or if that's just his overall play. But, I mean, I don't want a defender who's – and, again, I don't remember – the part of the problem that right now is like you see different stuff. I've seen some stuff on James Pierce. And you don't know if this is now misinformation season where people are trying to get negative, so maybe a guy drops a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, with that in mind, according to Ian Rappaport, NFL Network, James Pierce Jr. spent Monday of this week with the Cardinals, visited the Cardinals. Walter Nolan due to visit the Cardinals this week, and then after the Cardinals, he goes to the 49ers. He's the guy who at the Combine said, quote, "I'm the next Aaron Donald man." And then Adam Schefter says that, and here's a guy I really am not familiar with. Have you heard of South Carolina defensive tackle T.J. Sanders? Visiting on Tuesday of this week with the Cardinals.
I have, but that's because I've been in a bunch of mock draft loopiness, so I've seen a lot of these names. I couldn't tell you much about him as a player, but I have seen his name.
Darren, you're not doing those whole simulated draft.
Oh, it's so addicting.
AI, deep seek, whatever
Darren
those things
likes
are.
the power, the control
very
of a
addictive.
trade.
Oh my goodness.
The control of someone's future.
How
None
many
of them
per
mean
day
anything.
are you averaging? Because,
Couple.
we almost got
You're sitting there watching a ball game on your couch at night. And you flip it on. It takes you 5 minutes. It's interesting.
Are you in control of this, habit? Do you need a little? Do we, is there a 1-800 number you need to call?
Let me tell you something. It's a lot healthier than some of the other habits I could have,
Some of your other vices.
or that my kids have. What?
Is there a segue out of that, Dani, that you would like to?
No, I'll
pursue
let
by any
you
chance?
handle that.
Okay. Kids.
We haven't even had a chance to talk about Trey McBride getting a giant extension yet.
Was the segue 25-year-old
What a
Trey McBride?
week.
How about that?
I mean, golfs really well. Gets $76 million.
Hey, you have to earn something like that to afford green fees these days in Arizona this time of year. My goodness. Okay, so do we give Zaven a hard time next time we see him for putting a double bogey on Trey McBride's scorecard when he picked up his ball during the hole to, negotiate the most valuable tight end contract in NFL history? I mean, that was a little, come on. That was uncalled for. It's not winning behavior at the very least.
I think it might be winning behavior.
I see. If
I
you're
would
trying to
argue
win.
against.
I was going to say,
You're
did
trying to
Zaven
win?
win? No.
All right, so here's my question. Can Trey McBride resume the same role he basically had last year, and that is he's target one. He's basically, tight end one is basically wide receiver one in this offense. Is that feasible, sustainable, viable? I mean, I know a few people have kicked that around, and I think, Patrick Mahomes' number one target for how many years has been Travis Kelce. Lamar Jackson's number one target for how many years has been Mark Andrews, because they've struggled to add to the wide receiver room in Baltimore for at least 5 or 6 years, right?
They just got DeAndre Hopkins.
They keep trying, kicking the tires on new guys year after year. 49ers, right? Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk have been injured up and down years. What's been the one constant in San Francisco? George Kittle. So do you guys, he's paid like a number one receiver, obviously.
Well,
Can he continue to be the primary target in the passing game?
Let me frame it a different way. Because, yes, of course he could continue to be the primary target. My question to you, Paul and Dani,
I put it to you.
is if he is the primary target, can you win a lot of games that way? Because that's the question, not whether he can be of course he can be the primary target. The question is your offense going to click well enough if it's that way? I think there is a way to do it, yes.
Did he draw double and sometimes triple coverage at times last year? Like all three levels of the defense were paying attention to number 85? Yes. And you could contend that the Cardinals offense should have made defenses pay to a greater degree than they did based on all the attention, the gravitational pull that Trey McBride was getting. And, Drew Petzing has yet to have a suggestion box outside his office. But if he did, you maybe put a slip of paper in there and say, you know what? Let's implore some of these other weapons to take advantage of the defensive space that they're getting because of 85.
Especially in the red zone. That's not all on McBride, but he was very efficient in every other part of the field except for when it was right outside the end zone. So that's something that I'm looking for change this season. And again, that's not just on the tight end. I don't see why he couldn't continue to be that player and have that role that he had this previous year. He's shown that he can do it, and he's shown he can do it in a very short amount of time. To become the highest paid tight end in NFL history, and deservingly so when you look at his play, not even just the numbers, hardly played his rookie year, came off the bench his second year. He was still playing behind Zach Ertz, didn't get an opportunity to really be an impact player until Ertz got hurt. And he spent, 8-10 games without his quarterback, Kyler Murray, who was rehabbing his knee. So with all of that, to still put out the production that McBride has and earn the contract he has to keep him here through the 2029 season is very impressive. He's young. He's 25. I don't think he's anywhere close to have hit his ceiling. It is a question, though, of who, in an ideal world, who is the leading receiver? Who's the number one go-to player in this offense? Because while I don't have a problem with McBride, it's a big question of, should it be Marvin Harrison Jr.? Should it be your number one receiver?
Well, I'm going to start by saying I'm imagining Paul going up and banging on Drew Petzing's door to demand certain things in the offense. I would love to see that.
I did not say that. It was a hit and run. Put a slip of paper into a suggestion box that doesn't exist.
Listen to me, Drew.
And the onus really is more on the players in that huddle than it is the offensive coordinator, because guess what? You have an opportunity to get single coverage and get open.
I mean, if you draft Marvin Harrison 4th overall, the expectation is at some point he's going to be that guy.
I mean, this time a year ago, our answer to Dan's question would have been Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be your leading receiver.
That said, if this team goes out and Trey McBride is still the number one target and they win 12 or 13 games and they win a playoff game or two, nobody's going to complain.
And that works if you continue to win. If you can use McBride in how you have to use him, and you can rely on your receivers for those other big-time moments when McBride is double or triple teamed, and you can spread the ball out when you need to, but continue to move the offense through McBride, that works. That just wasn't the case on a consistent enough basis last year.
Do you think he's going to stop hurdling defenders?
No.
That's really the money question.
That's what he says. That's what he joked when he was asked at his press conference, of joking that was the first line in his contract.
But he said to us, Paul, the last line he said about that when you asked him about it, I want to stop. We'll see how long that lasts.
When you're in the moment, you can't stop it.
I mean, it's I don't know if it's funny. I don't know if it's stunning.
Well, you're laughing, so you must think it's quite funny.
I mean, he's almost ashamed of his hurdling.
Well, my guess is...
He gets really sheepish.
My guess is the head coach has probably said something to him. That would be my guess.
Protect his body,
he
protect
gets
the
that
ball.
Way it reminds me in high school when my sons were playing, and the coach when they were in high school had a rule, which was basically, and at that point, the high school they were going to, they had a handful of guys who could dunk. And the rule was, you can dunk, but you better dunk. Because if you go up for a dunk and you miss when you could have gotten a layup, we're going to have problems. And that's kind of how I feel like this hurdle thing is. Like, I think Jonathan Gannon's like, go ahead, hurdle all you want. If you make a mistake at any point where you get hit wrong when you're in the air or you get hurt, there's going to be hell to pay.
See, that's why...
I'm guessing, by the way. I don't know that for a fact.
I've always had the luxury of not having to worry about that. So that's good. We'll get to winning behavior here in a minute, but speaking of the head coach, did you hear what another head coach had to say about Jonathan Gannon? Mike McDaniel? This is Kevin Clark, ESPN. Is he works for ESPN?
Yeah, he
in
works
some
for
capacity?
ESPN now.
Okay.
Everybody works for ESPN now. Peter Schrager just moved over too.
At the NFL league meetings, he had basically a couple of deck chairs set up.
Yep.
Very informal.
Yes.
Doing Q&As. He must have a good relationship with a lot of the decision makers.
Kevin Clark is very good at that.
Okay. And so he asked a variety of questions. Mike McDaniel, next level IQ. And he was asked, what coach out there gives you problems or maybe doesn't get enough credit? And I'm quoting now, Mike McDaniel, Dolphins head coach, not to be confused with Mike McDonald, Seattle head coach, quote, I think a guy that doesn't get enough credit is Coach Gannon in Arizona. He's kind of taken a non-traditional approach to feature a really good player in Budda Baker. This guy's all over the place, a lot of blitzing going on, a lot of shell coverage, a lot of defensive coaches that are really good at their jobs. Shout out Nick Rollis as well. And it was very genuine. If you watch it, he sort of takes his time in delivering it, and you could tell he's flashing back to the Cardinals' win in Miami, Mike McDaniel, and what he had to deal with in terms of the schemes and looks that JG and Nick Rollis showed the Dolphins offense.
The same way we talk about players knowing players, coaches know coaches. And when a player is complimenting a player, it doesn't get much higher than that. And I think same with coaches and what Gannon has shown, not just Arizona, but the league the last few years, I think is pretty telling.
It's interesting. I Googled up a couple of things that he was talking about. It's amazing how many wannabe coach videos are out there.
Oh, yeah.
Of people breaking down the Cardinals' defense, especially the second half of last year, the scheme itself, what they were doing with three safeties, Budda the wild card. Could he be deep third? Could he be in the box? Could he be coming on a run blitz? How many of these wannabe coaches on YouTube are breaking down what the Cardinals are doing in terms of the scheme?
That's also because the second half of last season, Cardinals secondary was some of the best in the league in terms of keeping opponents out of the end zone.
Also, if you ask Nick Rollis or Jonathan Gannon or even Budda Baker if they were letting him move around more, if doing something different, they weren't going to tell you.
Yeah, we tried.
I believe you asked that question 2 or 3 times. Did you not, Paul?
I think more than
I
that.
think it was 3 or 4 times. And I did get a little bit of a hint at the end, a little bit. And basically it was something like this. I have my notes somewhere, but off the top of my head, what I was able to glean, and it wasn't much, but it was something along the lines of the defense was aware when Buddha was going to shoot his gun, meaning he saw something where he was going to shoot the gap, barnstorm the backfield, and they were ready to take his responsibilities if he did. That's what they incorporated. And they got him closer to the ball itself, closer to the box, in the box quite a bit, just so teams couldn't go away from him as easily.
Why wouldn't you? If he's capable of all this mentally, physically, he's willing to do it, why not? We've talked about how when you're looking at the interception numbers, how they're not super high. And Buda Baker has talked about, because quarterbacks don't want to throw to me. Okay, so if you can find other ways to have him make life difficult for a quarterback, it makes complete sense to me if everybody is on board to do that.
But otherwise, you guys are pretty much right. I spent 6 months getting the Heisman. The only one who got the Heisman more than me was Travis Hunter for pretty much the entire. All right, winning behavior. Here we go.
I see you. Let's go.
Can you display winning behavior? You have to consistently display winning behavior.
That's winning behavior.
You got to define what winning behavior is and hold people to that standard.
Yes.
I'm going to go off the page, and I'm going to give props, a shout-out to Dawn Staley, women's head coach, South Carolina basketball.
Next Suns head coach?
Hey.
I'd be in for that.
Yeah. Either that or Mike Malone, who was just canned by the Denver Nuggets. I don't know. Anyway, for the second straight year, even after a devastating loss in the national championship game, she took time out to salute the local media, calling the local media really the lifeblood of the program in so many ways, thanking them for their constant coverage, for really knowing the team, saying she turns down a lot of national interviews because they don't know her team. And I thought that was really cool. And she said, you know what, you cover us really well. And I really, 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 there's 7 reallys, appreciate all of you. That was a direct quote.
I will say this, obviously, it can be a little self-congratulatory when we praise coaches for media interactions. But I will say that 2 things about Dawn Staley that strike me. One, I was watching that game, and they absolutely got their doors blown off in the championship. And she had to go do, at one point in the second half, what I cannot stand, which is the in-game coaches interview. I hate those with a passion. Talk to him after the game. We don't need to talk to him during the game. You certainly don't need to talk to a coach who's losing by 20-some points with like 8 minutes to go in their season. What are they going to say? But I thought she handled it really professionally. She didn't come across like she was angry. And I love that when a coach is willing to do that. You mentioned what you said. Also, she's a hell of a coach. Like, I just love everything. I love how she carries herself. I love how she coaches. And I know you kind of smile when I said it. I said this after Vogel got fired. I'm like, I'd be all in for Dawn Staley getting to be the first woman NBA coach.
Now that it takes 60 seconds to process it, who do you think would get more out of this current Suns roster?
That's what I keep thinking.
The last 3 head coaches or Dawn Staley? There wouldn't be any quiet quitting out in the court like we've seen this year.
With her resume as both a player and a coach and just how she carries herself, I feel like she's got that kind of charisma that would carry over, doesn't matter what gender she was coaching. That's my personal opinion.
It's a lead by example. And I think the fact, too, even before that game, whenever Staley was asked about Paige Beckers, and she, gives her praise and then kind of turns it on her team and reminding the people who aren't, the media who isn't covering her team all year, of what her team has accomplished and making sure they get their praise as well. It is big props to local media. We talk about the growth of women's sports and women's coverage, and deservingly so, a lot of that does go to the teams, the coaches, the players, right, and all of that. And props also goes to local media for their coverage, and a lot of outlets that have grown their coverage in the last couple of years.
How about more props, winning behavior style, to the national anthem singer at the Cubs game the other day? It went something like this.
For the land of the free.
you're scoring at home, that was 25 seconds on the word free with about 17,000 E's on the end of it.
That was incredible breath control.
That was some serious cardio right there.
I'll be honest. I would need more context to determine if that's winning behavior or not.
No, it's winning behavior because it really wasn't his fault. He really stepped in. He saved the keisters of the flyover pilots who were late. They were late because on the Jumbotron, if you see the video, in the very far distance, here comes the flyover. A speck on the horizon. They're getting bigger and bigger. He can see the Jumbotron, I presume, and he's like, I'm trying to sync up the anthem with the arrival of the flyover.
That's big time winning behavior.
Big time.
Then.
And so he stepped in.
I apologize for throwing any shade. I was not familiar with your game.
Which, two things really quick. I checked the temperature because it looked really cold at Wrigley Field on April 4th. And as someone who's been there and done that, I worked 2 years in Chicago, and the only times I could get the Fox Sports Net tickets to a Cubs game at Wrigley was in April. Why? Because it was in the 40s, and you'd sit out there and be like, you're trying to convince yourself you're enjoying your ice-cold, old-style beer, and you're like, and it's 40-something degrees out there. And sure enough, I looked, and it was 49 that day. And what I love is the all-time high and low on April 4th in Chicago. The all-time high is 79 degrees, and the all-time low is 16. So you talk about the VIX, the volatility index, that is Chicago weather in the month of April.
It's going to be 100 this weekend, Paul.
I don't want to talk about that.
I'm
going to pretend you didn't say that.
Non-winning behavior by Mother Nature, damn it.
And the other little shout out is a 2-year resident of the 312. If you ever go to Chicago in July, maybe August, go to the Air and Water Show right there off North Avenue Beach. Oh, double ding. Really well done. You see all the flyovers. So there's that. What else do we have for winning behavior?
How about non-winning behavior by the security team at the Final Four?
Oh, yeah.
Houston won their semifinal, and Akeem Olajuwon, only one of the greatest basketball players of all time and the best University of Houston player of all time, and he was sitting pretty close to courtside, and they wouldn't let him on the damn floor.
I mean, 2 words. Brutal. It's Akeem Olajuwon.
I don't get it.
Houston basketball hasn't done anything of note since he was the star, him and Clyde Drexler.
I mean,
and
this is the worst one since the Golden State security wouldn't let the Toronto Raptors GM on the court after they won the title.
That was
but at least a lot of people won't necessarily know what the GM of the Toronto Raptors. I mean, how do you not know what Akeem Olajuwon looks like, for goodness sake?
when Houston is the team in the national championship game. All right, and the last one, 2 words, dire wolves. You guys saw this Game of Thrones style?
I did.
So
I don't know about Game of Thrones.
Talk about
I've never seen that, but
non-winning behavior, non-extinct species, because the geneticists brought back dire wolves. Okay, can I get a reaction on this?
Here comes Jurassic Park.
I think it's kind of cool, right? This is what makes science cool, to bring back. Well, I guess you said it technically wasn't bringing back from extinction, but doesn't it kind of make you wonder, 23andMe going bankrupt? Who's going to get cloned with science in the next couple of decades?
I wish more people out there felt like science was cool, but that's a topic for another day.
They're supposedly bringing back woolly mammoths.
I'm telling you.
Speaking of Jurassic Park.
Isn't the globe too hot for a woolly mammoth?
Well, I mean, then it works out well, right? Like in 15 years, we're all going to go extinct, and then it'll just be gone again. Or you could just shave it.
Do you think in 50 years this might have a sports angle? Like, do you think there might be a way to, sorry, Larry, but bring back a Larry Fitzgerald, put in some young, do some genetic engineering, and here, I mean, you need another receiver according to the mock draft people. Larry never did technically file his retirement papers, right? I mean, just bring him back on a comeback.
Are we cloning athletes? Are we letting these guys play at 60? What are we doing exactly?
That's what I'm saying. I wonder if there'll be a lifetime of all-pro football from future football stars. I don't know.
I think I saw this in a movie sometime. Not the Purge movies, but.
Okay. What's the last question we have with 2 weeks to go before the draft? Is there anything else out there that you think is going to, materially move the meter for the Arizona Cardinals? The fact we still have not had a trade in round 1 is definitely remarkable in some ways, right?
Don't you think at this point, because of the QB thing, it would have to be on the clock now? I mean, we're not going to have because the Titans are going to want Cam Ward. And that would be really the only thing that would happen right now, right?
I would think, yeah. I mean, unless somebody's going to come up. all the way. I mean, speaking of Shedeur Sanders, Colorado had their pro day, and the New York Giants had like 14 members of their front office at that pro day. Of course, it was both Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. But are they apt to maybe make a move up the board a little bit? There are 6 teams that don't have a long-term answer at quarterback right now. Tennessee, Cleveland, both New York teams, Pittsburgh, and New Orleans. So desperation and necessity can be a huge driver, especially on draft day.
Is there room for a third personality in New York's quarterback's room?
I'm gonna
Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Tommy Cutlets. You know what I'm talking about.
I'm going to back up here a minute.
Yeah.
To your point of there are 6 teams without what's long term? Do the Rams have a long term answer at quarterback? Do the Seahawks have a long term answer at quarterback?
That's a good point.
You don't believe in
Do the
Sam Darnold?
49ers? Wow.
That is a good point. It's interesting. Sean McVay was quoted earlier today as saying, "Yeah, I haven't really studied the quarterbacks very much."
Liar. I think Mel Kiper, was it Mel Kiper that put Jackson Dart to the Rams in the first round?
Oh, I could see that. I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
Because he got some good mileage out of Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Kind of a similar skill set, perhaps. I mean, yeah, I could most definitely see that. No question about it. And once again, Sam Darnold behind that Seattle offensive line, good luck with that. We'll see how Mike McDonald likes that one. All I know is if I could put a tariff on all the mock drafts and all the rumors and the reports and the misinformation and disinformation.
He starts with a stock market, he ends with tariffs.
No, I mean, you want to pay down the national debt. I mean, just put a tariff on all the misinformation this time of year.
I'm not going to make it.
Don't you have a meeting to make, Darren?
I do.
Hey, okay.
It's my review, actually.
Is it? Is it? I tell you what, if you walk in with something like this is most definitely winning behavior. You walk in, you give our boss surf, this sort of,
Can we get
gift,
you can we get you a portable power thing and have you walk into the office down the street with that on?
2 things.
Paul Calvisi.
I'm going to have a battery pack added to this so it's mobile, and then I'm going to turn it into like the Cardinals' own cheesehead bird head hat. I'm going to turn this into a hat. What do you think about that? That would be pretty cool.
I don't see you as a hat guy, but okay.
The forehead like this, anything to detract from my forehead. And that'll do it for this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.